Okay, in this video, we're talking all things gut issues. Ladies, this one's for you.
Yeah, so we're going to be diving into all things gut health, which is also related to hormone health. So for anybody who struggles with bloating or, constipation, just any type of funky gut problems, we have been there and we've really dove into this topic and learned a lot of the common causes and the ways to fix it. So we're going to break that down a little bit, and we're going to start by each telling our own respective stories with our gut health issues, because they actually do look a little bit differently. So Bella, you kick it off and share with us what you've struggled with when it comes to your gut health.
Okay, so I actually always had an absolute stomach of steel. I never had any issues with my gut health until more recently. So I feel like this is fresher in my mind as to how I navigated it and healed it. But I essentially had extraordinary bloating, and I was so backed up. I mean, as somebody who could eat anything and never really experienced that, I think for me, there was a lot of fear wrapped up in it. And I had this feeling of I need to fix this. And I think that put my body in a lot more of a stressful state, which just made the problem worse. So that was something that I really had to unpack a lot of layers to really get down to the root cause of it. But there definitely were some tangible things that I did. So if you are having those kinds of issues and you're really backed up for a few days, I would urge you to take a more holistic approach and not kind of go for over-the-counter medicines that some people had suggested to me. I was really determined to figure out a natural way to get my system going, for lack of a better word. So a few things that helped me was papaya. Papaya on an empty stomach, first thing in the morning after having warm water with lemon really helped. And then also eating a few of the papaya seeds, actually. And then really taking a deep breath before all of my meals, and just eating really slowly. That was probably the hardest one for me, is slowing down, being mindful, being very present, and just listening to the cues in my body to make sure that I wasn't eating in a stressed state. Another one that has also worked for me, again, first thing in the morning, is taking a unwaxed organic lemon and cutting it and essentially putting it into a blender with a tablespoon of olive oil and blending it, and then drinking that as a tonic of sorts. That definitely gets your system going. And those were the kind of main tangible takeaways. And then there were a lot of other kind of things that I had to address on an emotional, nervous system level that also helped me. But Caroline, I'm just going to let you give your backstory a little bit, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, and really quickly, what do you think the cause of your gut issues were? Was it something that you were doing in terms of eating? Was it stress? What do you think caused these issues to flare up for someone who had never had any issues in the past?
In all honesty, I am not 100% sure, but I do think for me, I was processing a lot of emotions. And I think part of that, it was really uncomfortable to sit with some of those emotions. And my nature is to do things, to move, to exercise. And in some ways, I think it was my body really forcing me to slow down and asking me to pause and to sit in stillness. As uncomfortable as it was, I feel like all of my other, you could say almost coping mechanisms, just were not working anymore. And that was, they say that the body whispers and then it gets louder and louder and louder. And I think I had had signs of needing to slow down a little bit before that I was pushing away, and that really culminated in some pretty uncomfortable months. I'm not going to lie. I mean, Caroline, you can speak to this. There were times where I was just so confused and so frustrated, and I think that was also a big part of it, is that I was trying to fix my body instead of listening to it. And only when I really slowed down and almost took my hands off the wheel and was okay, I don't know how to fix this, I don't have an answer for this, is when things started to shift. But you were definitely on the end of some pretty dire phone calls from me.
Yeah, and the reason that I asked that is just because I'm sure a lot of people have heard of the mind-gut connection, and that's a very real thing. There is science to support that the mind and the gut are very connected. And so it's just to show that sometimes gut issues can occur not from something that you're doing physically or not something that you're eating, but it occurs from the thoughts in your head, if you're really stressed. So just want to put that out there, because I think a lot of people sometimes are so quick to jump to well, I'm allergic to this food, or I'm a gluten sensitivity, or something very tangible like that. And a lot of times gut issues comes from stress. It comes from the thoughts that you're telling yourself. So that's the reason that I asked that, was sort of just to show people that that is a very real cause, and it's something that's often overlooked. My gut issues were a little bit different. This was years ago, but I've mentioned before on here that I struggled with disordered eating, and what that looked like for me was cutting out a lot of food groups that I thought were unhealthy. So actually cutting things out like dairy and gluten and thinking that they were causing me to be bloated. And a lot of the reasons that I was feeling like I had a lot of gas and bloating, and it was because one, my mind, I was super stressed about what I was eating, but two, I eliminated so many food groups that I was eating like protein and vegetables. And so that actually can really mess up your digestion and your gut. It can make you feel bloated, and then your gut is actually linked to your hormones. That's a whole other topic that we can make another video on, but everything is so connected. And my gut issues were at the peak of badness. That's not even a word. Peak bad state when I lost my period and when I was struggling the most with disordered eating. And what really helped me to fix this was to stop eliminating things and to have a more balanced diet. So making sure that when you eat, number one, you're not grazing. I think a lot of people who struggle with disordered eating do like lots of snacking throughout the day, which can really cause a lot of bloating. But for me, when I stopped doing that and I started eating big meals, big breakfast, big lunch, big dinner, and everything was very balanced. I was eating protein, I was eating carbs, I was eating fats. Like literally, my gut issues went away. Our bodies need balance, especially as women. We have hormones that are very sensitive, so cutting out entire food groups can sometimes really backfire. And again, I just want to call out bioindividuality. I know there are a lot of women who thrive on low carb diets, and like that's great if that works for you. But as women, our hormones are very sensitive, and so balance works really well. So if you're someone who has any, you don't even have to have like an eating disorder, but if you have any type of, and this is, by the way, I mean, the stats are pretty crazy. Like a large percentage of women can fall on the spectrum of having some type of disordered eating, even if you've never been diagnosed, even if you can't admit it to yourself. I was in that camp for a long, long time. But if you have any type of weird relationship with food and you also experience like bloating, gas, constipation, anything, there's a very high likelihood that they are connected. And so for me, what that looked like is to stop cutting foods out of your diet. Don't cut out dairy. You probably don't have a dairy allergy. You probably are not gluten intolerant, like you would know if you were a celiac. And so I think, yeah, just really slowing down and getting back to the basics of very balanced eating, spread your meals out 3 to 4 hours. That really helped me to eliminate a lot of my gut issues.
I think just to add a bit of nuance to the conversation as well is when you're really, really in the thick of it, dairy or gluten, those can be inflammatory foods. And it's not to say that you actually have an intolerance to them or you have to cut them out forever. But I do think like in my situation, when I was really, really at peak discomfort and having a hard time, the thing that also made such an impact was focusing on very simple, kind of grounding, nourishing meals. And I think also it's more so the mindset that I had around it, because there was a lot of fear for me. I was almost afraid to eat certain things because I was so afraid it was going to make my stomach hurt. And that just created a lot of food noise. And when I shifted to really sitting down with my meals and making them feel like warm and comforting and foods that I knew my body would digest easily, you know, I was eating a lot of oatmeal, and I mean, I did add protein powder just to make sure it was kind of blood sugar balancing, and or I would have, you know, one of my favorite meals was to have soft scrambled eggs with rice, you know, very, very simple, easily digestible meals that were balanced was actually, and then having this approach of this is going to nourish my body and just being really calm while I ate was really impactful for me. So I do agree with you that it's very important to have a kind of balanced approach and not be so rigid and cutting out entire food groups. But I do think if you're really, really struggling, sometimes the best thing you can do is just to simplify everything as much as you can and see food as medicine and nourishment for your body, and just, you know, try to really get in touch with like what would feel good to me, not what should I eat, well, not, you know, all these food rules that we have, but like what in your body would feel the most supportive. And even if your mind wants to tell you that it's not XYZ grams of protein or it's not the best, you know, most nourishing thing, like it's really more important in those situations to actually listen to your body, because it also builds self-trust, and then you'll know what foods feel good and what foods don't feel good. And I think that allows your body to be in that rest and digest state, which is really important for digesting food.
Yeah, and also just to go back to that point, I do want to caveat it and say, if you're not eating high quality dairy and high quality gluten, that is going to be a problem. For dairy, like raw dairy is actually not inflammatory. It's actually really, really nutrient dense and really good for your body. The problem is just most of the supermarket foods and dairies that we find in the grocery store are not that. So of course, please, be cognizant of that. And same thing with dairy. I mean, if you look at the ingredients on a package of bread that you buy in the grocery store, like it's not just flour and water like it used to be. So yeah, when you're eating gluten, opt for the single ingredient versions. Those are the ones that I'm referring to when I say that's not what's upsetting you. A lot of times what's upsetting your stomach is all of the additives, the sucralose, the gums, the flavorings, like that stuff is made in a lab, and it's no coincidence that it's hard on your stomach to digest that. So that's another thing to add is, like Annabelle said, is getting down to really simple foods. That includes anything that you're buying at the grocery store. Like read the ingredients on the back and really try to opt for single ingredient foods, like foods that were made in nature. That is going to be the best way to reset your gut. That is how we were designed to eat. Foods that are just single ingredients, it really goes a long way. And also adding in probiotics. So taking a probiotic is always great, but fermented foods like certain cottage cheeses are fermented, sauerkraut, kimchi, like pickled fermented vegetables. Those are great. They're great to add to your meals, and they're really good for your gut as well.
Well, I think that's all from us for today. So we will make another video on, the gut and hormone balancing, but thank you so much for watching.
Yeah, let us know like what resonated, if you have any questions, and we'll see you in the next video.